Today's video is all about ferns. You're going to see different types of ferns and how to care for them to get the best results. We'll also show you how to plant them, whether it's in a larger container or just moving from one flower bed to another. You'll also see how we cleared out this area right here, took all the weeds and everything else that was growing there, and replaced them with some beautiful river pebbles to make it absolutely gorgeous, and we'll do a step-by-step for you on that. If you've never been here before, my name is Marlene. Welcome to Marlene's How-Tos, my home and garden channel. So ferns actually belong to the family called Pteridophyta, and they're absolutely gorgeous. Believe it or not, guys, there are over 10,000 different species of fern. They come in different, sizes, and we'll take a look at those. They're actually shade-loving plants, and they're considered to be a little bit more primitive because they don't reproduce using flowers. They love moist, humid areas, though they can adapt to other types of environments, but that is the perfect one for them. They're used, in hanging baskets, they're used in the garden spaces, as well as in floral arrangements. So because they don't produce using flowers or reproduce using flowers, they actually reproduce using what are called spores, and you'll see them on the back. And this is one of the things that you can use to determine if what you're having is a fern or if it's something else. So all that brown that you're seeing there, the elevation right there, those would be the spores that you are looking at. And that's actually a volunteer fern right there, a Boston fern. Another volunteer fern again, guys, this lady fern right here. And I'll show you a close-up right there. You can see the spores again, and that's how they reproduce. And typically it's usually by water, and that's why they like moist areas as well too, because that's how they get, those parts to spread along. But it can also be by wind sometimes. These are lady fern right here, and ferns can actually, like this one, can be maybe 18 to 30 inches in height, and it actually grows in zone 4 to 8. And I never planted these guys. I've never bought a fern before. I actually have them as growing up as volunteer ferns. They just appear and I transfer them out. These right here are Boston fern. And these are the most commonly seen ones. They actually are hardy in zones 9 to 11, meaning that they can survive there without having to worry about it being too cold for them or too hot in some cases. They fluff out in the summertime, and they're absolutely gorgeous on your porches and different areas. You'll see them from time to time. These right here, these are staghorn fern, and you can understand why they'd be called that because the leaves, on all ferns are called fronds, kind of like a palm. And they actually look a little bit like the antler of, a deer or a moose. And these are not necessarily the best ones for beginners because they are a little bit harder to care for. They're a little bit more prone to disease because of the way the leaves overlap, the larger leaves, because there are two different types of leaves, the basal ones and those antler-like ones that hang down. And they're epiphytes like orchids, so they prefer to be up in trees and on logs. Over here we have some Japanese painted fern, and these are absolutely gorgeous and not as common. You don't see them that often. They're hardy in zones 4 to 9, and you can tell, that it's one of those types based on the purple coloration in the mid-stem areas. They're great companions for hostas because, they grow really well together under the same conditions. They both like shade. Just be sure to space them out at least, I would say 12 minimum to about 18 inches because they like to spread out. And they're also tree ferns as well too, and they're very unusual. You don't see them everywhere. These were actually at the Atlanta Botanical Garden. I caught sight of these a few years ago when we visited there. And you can see that they are tall, really high up, and the leaves are pretty large. So again, not very commonly seen, but they definitely are there in different locations, and they will survive, with the right care. Now, just to mention that these asparagus ferns right here, as they're called, and these actually belong to my mother-in-law. She had them on her porch in Jamaica. These are actually not true ferns because they produce white flowers, and they also produce some little berries from those flowers as well too, which are actually can be a little bit toxic for animals and for people as well too. But they're absolutely gorgeous, but just not a fern. So now we're going to take a look and see how you can plant one. I'm just going to basically move this one from where it is and put it in a container so I can enjoy it that way. So the first thing you want to do is to make sure your soil is a little bit moist so that way you're not disturbing the root structure too much. And then just go in with your trowel like I'm doing here, and you just ease it out gently. And of course, you want to make sure that you have enough soil around the roots so they're not too disturbed and they're not, getting too much shock from the transplant process, because there is some stress involved in that. So we just try to make it as easy as possible for them. So this is it right here, guys. I could have trimmed off some of the leaves, but I'll do that at a later time. Over here I have a plastic container, and it's best to plant ferns, by the way, guys, in plastic, because the terracotta pots like these, if they are not sealed, then they have them dry out easily and you're gonna have to keep watering them more frequently. Also, they have shallow roots, so they do not like deep containers. It's better to put them in more shallow containers. So over here now we have our river pebbles. We're going to be using these in there, and you can use different type of rocks if you don't have river pebbles to put at the bottom. Just make sure they're small enough. And we have some potting soil over there, which is typically what I use. There are different blends you can buy that's already made up that way, but it still works. It's very effective. So I would say if that's what you have available, go for it. And that's my trowel right there. Of course, you want to make sure your pot has holes in the bottom for proper drainage, because even though they do like moisture, they can still have root rot, because the roots, they need to breathe. And if they're not having a little time when they dry out a little bit, then that's not going to happen. So I just went ahead and I started placing my river rocks in at the bottom. And they're, I just like how they look. They have that nice, very, authentic look, very organic and all of that. So then what I did was to put about 2 to 2.5 inches in depth under there. And of course, it's going to vary depending on the size of whatever container it is that you're using. And then I went ahead and I added in my potting soil onto it. And as you can see right here, it's a little bit moist, but sometimes you may buy them and they don't look like that. So, you'll need to add a little bit more water when you're finished, but we'll take a look at that as well. So this is it right here, guys. So I made a well in the center that was deep enough to allow for the fern to sit in it and be level with the top of the soil. You just gently press it in there and fill in with more soil. And again, make sure that, it's level with the surface, so that way you're not covering over the leaves. And then once I did that, I left about 2.5 inches at the top, so I could have enough space to put my little river rocks there, river pebbles there. And just went in and I layered it little by little. And this was actually quite relaxing. And if you don't have any ideas of any other types of materials that you think you might use for this process, you can always leave it to me in the comments. I like to see other people's, options that they try as well. And more so, if it has worked really well for you, then definitely, we want to see that. So you basically go ahead and get it watered. Make sure the water runs out the bottom, so that way you gave it a good soak. So now we're going to go over to taking care of the flower bed here. And as you can see that there are a lot of weeds in here. And these are the weeds that kind of like shade for the most part, shade and moisture. We have some dollar weeds right there. You can see that we have some moss in there as well too. That's because it's a little moist and a little bit compact. And of course there's shade right there, part shade. So this is just perfect setting for them to come up here as well. But we're going to go in and get all of them taken out. So what I did was to go ahead and get my cultivator right here and just go in and gently scratch off the surface. And you're trying to work out the weeds, but you want to make sure that you're not damaging the roots. So try not to, that's what I did. I tried not to go too close to it, but close enough to get the weeds out. And again, you always want to make sure that the soil is moist whenever you're going to go in and do this type of a work on it, because it makes it that much easier. It's easier for you to pull the weeds out or whatever else might be there. I also had some pine needles that came over on there as well. So it's just easier to move everything. And if you're liking this video so far, be sure to give me a thumbs up and share it out with anyone that you think it might benefit. They may want to put ferns in their yard and they just want to have an idea of how to care for them. So I just went in and continued to clear them out and just pull them. And again, it was so easy. We had a little rain that fell before. If that's not the case for you, then you just, water them the night before. And that way they'll be ready for you when you're ready to start. So let's go ahead and take a look at the next step. So you can see that I cleared it out. Of course, you're going to have 1 or 2 weeds left in the area, because you're not going to get every single one, but not to worry. Over here you can see how they grew right by the foundation. I'm going to take all of those out because I don't want them growing there. So over here, this is what is called a weed liner, or weed prevention liner. It goes by different names, and you can get these at your garden center. And we're going to go ahead and cover the areas with it. And it's pretty easy to work with. You just get your scissors and you're going to go in and cut out the shape that you want. So of course you always want to measure, this area, how long it is, so you kind of have an idea. And always get a little bit extra just in case, you maybe make a miscut somewhere and you want to do it over. And these are the river pebbles right here. They're different brands that you can use, but this is the one that I chose. Same one that I used when I was planting the ones in the pot earlier. So we're now ready to go ahead to the next step, guys. Feeling good about it so far. So here's what I did. I just went in and cut little different sections and put them in, because you're trying to wrap around the trees. If you're doing it before, it's a little bit easier, but because these are here and I'm doing it afterwards, it's a little bit more, challenging to cover the spots. So don't be afraid to just go ahead and just use what you have piece by piece and put them in. You don't have to have everything as one piece. So right here now you can see I emptied about 2 bags on here based on the area that we were working with. Every single spot was not covered, so we're going to go ahead and cover those in. But this was the progress so far. And if you're going along and you wanted to give it a break, this might be a good spot, because this is going to hold the liner down and the weed preventer in place. It's going to hold it down till the next day, and then you come in and you fill it in like we did here. So you can see right there now, this all packed in, everything is fully covered, and I absolutely love the way how it looks. I really do. I think it's just absolutely gorgeous. It just looks very organic. And it's not just a matter of look. This is the type of thing that they like, because it helps to keep the moisture in so they don't dry out very quickly. It's more like a nice environmentally friendly look, where they don't have, like a lot of plastics, showing up at the top and all of that. So I really liked it. And if you love gardening and flowers, be sure to hit the subscribe button and tap on the notification bell twice so you never miss an upload. I give tips on various gardening topics, and I arrange flowers sometimes as well too. So here's our little guy here a few weeks afterwards. You can see it's looking really good, nice and fresh. And if you have any dried leaves in there, you want to go in and just trim those off like I'm doing here. I didn't have too many here. And this was a more smaller variety of Boston fern, so it wasn't very large, but nevertheless, it's still very effective, still looks good. Nice little spot on my front porch is where I have it. And on the warmer days, you can always just go in and give it a nice spritz, to keep it moist. But bear in mind that when you do this, you want to do it like in the morning, so that way it's going to evaporate off, by the evening time, so you don't have that sitting on it overnight. So I think it's looking really good right there. It's pretty much at home with the river pebbles in there. If you feel you need to add a little bit more, you can always go in and add some more as time goes by. What I like to mention too is, because you will want to have it sitting in a saucer, which I do right here. You can put some river rocks on a saucer and then just rest it on top of it. And that way, it helps it to breathe better at the bottom and retain some moisture that's not sitting, the plant's not sitting in it. And next we talk about feeding them. You can use regular plant food to feed them. Bear in mind that you only do this once per season, because they don't like to be fed too much. It stresses them out, and you also want to use it as half strength. So let's say if you're going to use, typically using 1 tablespoon to 1 gallon water, you'll use half to 1 instead. Now, talking about stressing them out, this is what can happen. Let's say you were away for a few days. The air is very hot and dry in the summertime. They didn't get any water. Then the leaves can get scorched a little bit and look like this. So this is what can happen. But you can see they have healthy leaves coming up in the center. So this plant is not dying at this point. It's just a little stressed. So we'll just go in and get that taken care of by using the the clippers that I have here, and just taking off the dried ones, because this is just more stress on the plants. You just want to take those off. And be sure when you're using your trimmers to clean them off, wash them with soap and water. If you have some rubbing alcohol, you can always wipe it on there too. And that actually prevents the spread of diseases from one plant to another. And I practice that for pretty much all of my plants. And then you're going to water it to make sure that it has a nice spritz on there. I don't see too many pests on my ferns, but I did notice this one, and right here you can see it ate a little bit of the leaves. This wasn't an aggressive eater though, but nevertheless, it's not something you want to stay there. So you can go ahead and get insecticidal soaps and use any one of them here, or any other type that you may see, and just spray them on there and they should be fine. In the fall season, you can cut them back, just to make it a little bit more neat, because they are going to dry down. They do go down at that point, and then they're going to come up back in the spring. So just to tidy up things a little bit, you can go in and cut them back when they look like this, or even before, when they start turning a little bit brown. And then once you've cut them down, because the mulch is there, the stone mulch is there, then you're pretty much good to go. You don't need to do anything else with them. And if you want, you can always put those leaves in your compost pile. As long as there's no pests or diseases on them, you can always add them in to use them that way. So we're kind of multi-purposing this right now. And then you just wait for them to come up again in the springtime, and this is how they typically come up. You'll see the leaves are kind of curled over like that, and then they'll come up and they'll open up for you. And it's always so wonderful when the springtime comes around and you see all of your wonderful plants that made it over the winter and they're coming back up again. Bear in mind too that, fern, that they actually survive better, or any plant in general, when they're in the ground if you have a really cold winter, because the ground around it tends to insulate it. While if they're in, pots or smaller pots, they get stressed out a little bit more. So if that's the case, you can always bring it indoors, and take it out at a later time. When it gets to 55 degrees or less, sometimes for some ferns, a little bit stressful. So you can keep them in your garage or just somewhere where they get some light, and you can keep watering them, or, next to a sunny window or a door, but don't let them touch the window, or don't let it be one that's south facing, that's going to have direct sunlight beaming in on them and burning them through the glass. So I hope that this gave you some great ideas for your ferns. I look forward to your comments, and I thank you so much for watching, and I do hope to see you in the next video. Take care.